Hi, I am Dawn Westmoreland, and I come from Asheville, North Carolina, the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, hailing from WPBM FM LP 103.7, the voice of Asheville. I've had a syndicated radio show just about for 3 years. So exciting. It's called The Empowered Whistleblower, where I blow the whistle on things that can be better in the workplace. And I bring on guest experts. Today, I have decided to be that guest expert. I have had several psychologists say that I am one of the most resilient people that they've met in their lives. Well, I'm sure there's somebody out there that's more resilient than me, but I have been through a lot of trauma and not only survived the trauma, but I have thrived through it. So how can we bring this into the workplace? Well, we're going to talk about it. So one of the first things is that we all feel fear. None of us get to escape fear. I mean, I have felt fear often, and people have said, weren't you afraid when you did some of the things like speaking up in the government about racial discrimination, about nepotism, about illegal hiring practices? Heck yeah, I was scared. But, the thing about fear is we get to choose every single day whether we want to be empowered or disempowered. And I always say, hey, let's be empowered, even if we have to take baby steps. So I want to talk about some steps because I'd like to have some more shows on resiliency and bring in some other experts, not just me. I mean, there's other people with tried and true methods of how they become resilient. And who doesn't love a great story? Not a story of somebody who has been traumatized and just survived. And that's very important too. But people who have been through great tragedies and traumas, and now they're thriving and they're helping other people. And that's what this show is about, resiliency. So let's thrive with resiliency. We're going to thrive with resiliency and learn some new tips. So I talked about confronting your fear. Okay, let's be afraid, but let's move forward, even if we have to take those little steps. And the thing is that if we start thinking negative, okay, then everything becomes negative. The energy flows where we put our energy, and it's so very important to pay attention to the energy we're putting out into the world. Now, I'm not saying walk around with rose-colored glasses because that's just, plain ridiculous. But the more we can be positive, the better and realistic outlooks we can have. So the thing is also too, maybe I'm a little guilty of this, and no, I'm a lot guilty. Let's be real. It was always hard for me to ask for help. And I have to say, probably a lot of it was, being very independent in the Air Force. I went in the Air Force in 1985, when there were about 11% women in the Air Force at that time. And I stayed in 20 years, retired in 2005. And then that number of women had doubled. And so I was around a very aggressive, egotistical work mind. And hey, that's needed. That's needed in the military. It was needed while I was in the Air Force. But the thing is that I always thought it was weak to ask for help, and I was so wrong. The thing is when you do need help, is being brave enough and smart enough and balanced enough and grounded enough to know that you need help. I mean, if you need to hire an attorney, get some, legal advice, or get a free pro bono, consultation with an attorney. If you need to see your rabbi, your spiritual person, your mentor, if you need to talk to a teacher, somebody. Mental health, that's so important. We're going to get into that too. Get out there, reach out and get that help that you need. You don't have to do it alone. Again, I'll admit one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my life is doing it all by myself. And once I learned to get that support, things got so much better, so much easier. Another thing is that we all have, like a moral compass, or, this inner knowing, this integrity inside of us all. We do. And we know right from wrong. And don't let anybody peer pressure you ever. If you know something is right, it's right, because you do have that inner knowing, that integrity inside of you. The thing about resiliency is we never know when we're going to need it. Sometimes a surprise comes out of nowhere. I'll tell you, 3.5 years ago, I got the call that nobody wants. I had a loved one. It was my mother. She was approaching 80 years old, and she had metastatic breast cancer and had spread down both her sides through her lymph nodes. And I just kept telling myself, this can't be real. This can't be real. My mom can't have cancer, but she had cancer, and it was very serious and very deadly. And we went through a year and a half of supporting her, my family, my siblings and I, and great friends of mine and my mother's. We all came together and supported. And I have to say, it was the most eye-opening emotional roller coaster I've been through in a while, because one minute I'm preparing for my mother to pass because she had several close calls where we had to take her to the hospital in the middle of the night. And, I'm mentally preparing myself, to let go of my mother, and I'm very tight and close with my mother. And then the next minute, my mother's pulling through and, she's getting better. And then, out of nowhere, she's having some hard times. The chemotherapy was horrible for her. And it was, wow, talk about a lot of anxiety. And I had to learn from that. It was, I'm going to talk about this. It was a gift of resiliency, not a gift that my mom had cancer, but the gift I got out of it is learning to be more resilient and learning to manage, my emotions, because it is an up and down journey. So we have to, be curious, be open-minded to the fact that resiliency can come anytime, anywhere, right? Now, I talked earlier about, reaching out for support. Most of us have some kind of practice, it could be, our faith, it could be spiritual. We all have something that we gravitate toward and we lean toward. I grew up with religion. I grew up being Catholic, and I don't regret that. There's a lot of goodness that I learned. But I also today, I feel more of a spiritual pull. And, we all have to decide, where to go. Do I go and talk to that rabbi? Even, I'm not Jewish, but, if that's somebody that can help me. And I actually do know a couple of rabbis that I do love and respect and think the world of. You bet I'd reach out to them in a heartbeat, even though I'm not Jewish. So it's really important to decide, who can you trust? Do they have the experience of dealing with trauma? And once you figure that out, find your person. I have a spiritual mentor named Martha, and I have been with Martha since we're probably heading toward 11 years. And the funny thing is, when I met her, I was listening into a conversation. I was with a bunch of women, and we were outside, campfire kind of thing, just enjoying ourselves. And then I heard this younger lady say that, Martha's the greatest thing. And, she's helped me with so many problems. And I kept thinking, I got to meet this person. Boy, do I ever need help. I had just gotten through standing up to the second largest federal agency against nepotism and hiring practices and racial discrimination. And that's because of my background in HR. Back then, I had 21 years of HR experience. Today, I'm heading, toward my 32nd year, 32nd year, wow, time goes by, of human resources. And it really has served me well. So I found out about Martha, and she lives, about 40 minutes from me. And I make an effort every single month to see Martha, because she is my spiritual counselor. And the beautiful thing about it is, she's not telling me how to do things. She's helping me be a better version of myself, because that's what I want on this earth. And I'd like to think that many of us out there want to be better versions of ourselves. So please, if you're going through some kind of a hard time, having any barriers out there, find your Martha, find your Joe, your Stuart, find somebody that can help you, learn to be stronger, and also somebody that holds you accountable. That's so very, very, very important. And the thing is that, as we learn to be resilient, we can also, be very rigid. The thing we want to do is realize none of us have mastered everything on this earth. I can't say I even mastered dealing with my mother's cancer, although if somebody in my family had cancer today, I think I could deal with it better than, I dealt with my mother. I mean, I was full of tears. I was full of fear. What if, what if my mom dies, but the thing is that the more that you can be open, relaxed, I say relax, that can be hard in the time of trauma. Just be very open-minded that you have lots of options. Okay. During that time, we came together and, I ended up having the responsibilities of durable power of attorney. So while my mother was having all this, I say mind blowing because it was, she had 6 chemotherapies and 33 radiations. That's a lot. That's a lot for anybody, and 2 major surgeries for her breast cancer. And I had to start thinking, what do I need to do next? Because you have to have a calm mind, and that can be really hard when things are exciting. When I say exciting, I don't mean exciting like good. I'm talking about through the chaos. You have to become grounded. And when I say grounded, you have to have a daily practice, whether it's praying, whether it's meditation, whether it's watching, wildlife, looking out your window at the birds, or taking a walk in the woods or nature, or gardening. Now, I love gardening. I tell you, as soon as I get out there and I get in my garden, and I have to say I have a pretty nice garden, about, let's see, oh boy, I've been out of the Air Force, retired 18 years. That's another hard to believe. Well, one of the coolest things that I did is, I'm a total nerd. I admit it full out. I love gardening. So when I got out of the Air Force, I still had the GI Bill, and I wanted to learn everything I could about gardening. And so I did. I went to school and I did really good with the horticulture. I think I won or earned 3 different awards, and I wasn't even trying. It just goes to show that when you're doing something you love, you're going to do really good at it. And that's for everybody, not just me. And I did really good at it. So when I get out in my garden, I am not thinking about, I'm not getting along with somebody in my family, or, my truck needs work, it needs some mechanical work, or, worrying about, are my dogs going to ruin the carpet? I have 2 puppies, right? And by the way, I've removed the carpet, or not the carpet, the rugs. My mind is all, I'm in the zone. I'm like enjoying the flowers, enjoying the beauty, the textures, the colors, the smells, the art of the horticulture. And then I'm learning and respecting, the science of the horticulture. Sometimes I have plants that are not doing well, and I love it. I mean, not that my plants aren't doing well, but I love research and figuring out how can I handle this, what's eating on my plant. So I love that. It takes my mind off of traumatic things, and we all have to have that. So whatever it is, some people love tinkering with their vehicles. They're very good mechanics and such. I can think of several people like that. Some people like knitting, some people like flower arrangements. Whatever it is, we all have to have it. And the thing, I'll be the first to admit, when I get stuck in a rut, and I do because I'm human too, is I'll find myself watch a little bit too much Netflix. And I mean, I have to poke myself, pride myself to get out of that easy chair, even though I might be feeling bad, feeling stuck, feeling in a rut, and I have to force myself to get out there and do something. What works for me is when I take baby steps. I'd love to tell you that I can just all in, jump in, and no, I can't. I can't sometimes. I'll tell myself, okay, for 15 minutes, I'm going to do nothing but, clean up the house, just 15 minutes. And then the next thing I know is 15 minutes and I'm, I'm more in the motivational area of, okay, this ain't so bad. So I'll keep cleaning up, I'll sit down and, motivate myself. Okay, 15, 20 minutes of marketing my business because it's so important to stay engaged, right? So that's very, very important. I think one of the most important things is that balance. And I unfailingly will tell people I majorly screwed up about 11 years ago. And when I was standing up to the second largest federal agency that I work for in the United States, I was, committed to standing up to them. And I was working weeks and weeks and weeks, in the work, come home, doing all the research, writing up all the things they were doing wrong, these statutes, these United States codes and things like that. I'm a total nerd when it comes to research. I love research. But the thing is, I was obsessed with it. And even though, I had a positive ending, an outcome. But before I got that, I crashed and burned. I really did. I crashed and burned because, I was working 7 days a week, nonstop. As soon as I get home, the minute I get home, I wouldn't take a break. I wouldn't sit down and, just pour myself, an iced tea or something to drink and just, relax for a few minutes. I was on the computer researching and, writing up the reports, writing up what happened today, writing up about, the people that were bullying and harassing me and retaliating against me. And it went on for months and months. And honestly, I crashed and I burned. And at the time, it sucked because I never, ever remember feeling more tired, more burned out, more vulnerable, more raw than I did at that time. But, 11 years later, I have to say it was a gift. It was a gift because I crashed and burned. I ended up in the hospital for 3 days. I was actually in the Charles George VA Medical Center. And I was a volunteer for that. One, I didn't feel safe because I had turned in a bunch of government people, was not feeling safe. And there were all kinds of signs, I was being harassed. And I was burned out. I was exhausted. I was tired. I was stressed out. I was beyond helping myself. I knew I needed help and I voluntarily did that. I don't regret it to this day. I never regret telling people because even strong people, and I consider myself very strong, 20 years in the Air Force with a whole bunch of men. You got to be strong. And I don't care if you're a woman or a man, anytime you stay in the military, you learn a lot about resiliency for sure and discipline. So I crashed and burned, and it took some mental health professional help. And it took also me being on antidepressant, anti-anxiety medicine and learning mindfulness. And, a year later, I had a positive outcome. And that's because I had to start learning balance. I had to learn that I can't take everything serious. And I had to kind of compartmentalize things where, okay, I'll work on this, this report I'm going to do, where I've been retaliated against. And then I'm going to give myself a nap, a massage, relax. You have to do that for yourself. I see it all the time. I see people on LinkedIn, especially, and I'm always curious. I'm like everybody else. I'm addicted to social media, and I try to use it wiser, though. And so I'm seeing some people post, sometimes 3 to 5 times a day, 7 days a week, and I'm thinking, holy moly. I've even asked some of them, are you doing this yourself? Yeah, they are. And I'm like, well, when do you take some downtime? I'm trying not to judge. It's just that I've been there where I've crashed and burned. And then, weeks or months down the road, all of a sudden I hear this, I don't want to say confession, but this aha moment. And I see a posting, well, worked, 3 weeks straight, and now I'm burned out, and, I'm tired. I'm having a health problem. Yeah, I get it. Been there, done that. So it is so important to maintain your health. So one of the coolest things I'm doing right now, and it's working with a wellness coach. Now, I'm a life coach, and I call myself a resiliency or personal power coach. The thing with working with a coach is that a lot of them are niched, like me. I'm not going to be a life coach for everything in life. And so I'm working with a wellness coach who's asking me, what are the changes you want in your life? Well, I want less stress, right? Because then we're healthier. And I want to get out there and exercise more and to feel, more disciplined to do that. I mean, it used to never be a problem when I was in my 30s and 40s, but now I'm in my later 50s and it has changed. So here's the thing. Sometimes you do need to bring somebody in your life, and it could even be a friend. It's not that you have to go out and spend tons of money or anything like that to join a membership. I mean, I take my dog. Now I have two puppies. One's, almost an adult, and I take him for a walk, and I make myself do that because he needs it. He's a high energy dog. He's a Cairn Terrier, like Toto on the Wizard of Oz, and he is high energy. So if I don't take him for a walk, he is very likely to do mischievous things in the house that I don't approve of or like. Okay. So, it's a two-way win-win. Let's say it's a win-win because I'm getting that, I'm getting out of the house, I'm walking in nature, getting that exercise, getting my heart rate up, my eyes are seeing all the beautiful visual things, Western North Carolina is just beautiful. I mean, our trees, our rivers, even our rocks are amazing. I love rocks. I've been collecting them for years, along with my father. My siblings do it too. My grandparents did it too. So the thing is health and well-being, because if we don't take care of ourselves, guess what? The next thing we know, we're getting sick, we're having chronic issues. And instead of, spending money on something that you want to do, maybe you want to go out kayaking or something like that and go out and buy a kayak and get out there on a lake or on the river. You're out there spending money, seeing a professional, medical expert. So it's really important to mind your health and well-being. Mental health is something we should never be ashamed of. And I am so excited and proud to see more and more, especially men out there, because they've been conditioned to always be tough, to be the rock. Even today, I mean, we all experience life. We all see the same things, but we have different filters. And so it's really important to have good health and well-being. Now, I'll share a story, and it's a crazy story, but it's a good one. One of the best stories of resiliency was many years ago. I was in a relationship with an alcoholic, and he wasn't going to change. And I was going crazy because I think I was becoming sicker than he was. And so one day I got on the phone, called AA hotline. They told me to go to open AA meeting, Alcoholics Anonymous. Open means anybody can come. And so I went. And as I walked in, there was 4 men, older men, probably in their 60s, maybe 70s. And they were all happy and smiling. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. I'm so miserable. How could I be happy? This is so serious. My life's ruined. I'm going to get killed if I stay in this relationship, because he was blacking out and trying to choke me, in the middle of the night. And it wasn't good. So I grabbed my purse and I ran like hell out of that building, I thought. But I end up in the janitorial room, and yep, it's funny now. I wasn't funny then. And I heard the voice, you need to be in that meeting. So with all the courage I could muster, I walked back to the table, and these 4 men pretended like I just went to the bathroom. They knew what happened. So at the very end, this older man who was scruffy wearing the worst clothes in the world, said, "Dawn, would you feel comfortable falling behind me in my vehicle? I want you to meet my wife. She's in Al-Anon." And that's a program, for the people who are trying to get help that are dealing with alcoholics. And anytime you can pull away if you don't feel safe or you change your mind. And I'm thinking, oh, this is a little weird, but something about this man. So I'm following behind him in this old beat up vehicle. And guess what? He pulls up to a multi-million-dollar home, and I just bursted into tears. At the time, I was living in Mexico Beach area. I was living in a little cabinet because we'd already sold our house, and we were about to transfer to South Dakota, to the Black Hills. I had walked by this house literally 50 times or more, praying for help, praying to God, please help me, come save me. That man was my savior that day. He was very rich. He was a helicopter pilot, retired from the Army. His wife was a well-to-do author. And he empowered me by telling me, Dawn, you always have choices. You can stay with, in the relationship, or you can move on. And I decided to move on, and he gave me the tools. He taught me the same tools that he had learned. And by the way, the reason why those men were smiling, laughing, and cutting up in that open AA meeting, oh my goodness, they had been sober for over 30-something years. So I'm going to wrap up and say this, that sometimes our gifts come in ugly wrapping paper. And I have adapted that from, I've heard that quote from other people, and I believe so, because when I look at that man today in my mind and image, and he's probably passed away because it's been over 30-something years, he was the scruffiest man with ratty looking torn clothes and a beat up rusty vehicle. And I had judged that man, and he ended up being the person who probably has helped me the most in my life. I left that relationship and I moved on, and I got help. Sometimes our gifts do come in ugly wrapping paper. So I encourage you to look at everything that happens to you, the good, the bad, the in-between. If it's an experience that, is causing trauma, and, you want to learn from it, okay? Look at it as, what is the gift in it for you? Okay? For me, that last story that I talked about, the gift was I had choices. And I learned that from the least likely person I would have ever in 1,000 million years ever would think I would meet. Decide, what can you learn from each and every experience? I even look back as the alcoholic I was involved with for 3.5 years. He taught me about choices. He taught me to be stronger. He taught me to, reach within with all the faith I had. And he taught me that I needed to have self-love. That self-love was leaving him. Now, I didn't leave him in hate. I knew he had a problem, but he also chose not to get help. And, sadly, he ended up, at that time, over 30 years ago, getting the highest blood alcohol content recording by the authorities in the Black Hills. It was sad, but he chose not to help himself. And I learned I can't change others, but I can change myself. So as a wrap up, always remember that there is a gift in everything that we go through. The trauma, the experiences. Look hard if you have to. You might have to go back to it, and when things are calmer, and realize that everything out there is a gift to be a better version of yourself and to be more resilient. So I hope these tips that I've talked about in my stories, I hope that they help you to realize that we can all be resilient. I believe we all can be resilient. It's in all of us, even if we do it by baby steps. Take care. We'll see you next time. Stay empowered. I'm Dawn Westmoreland, the Empower Whistleblower, wishing everybody to always be empowered. Be well.